Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris Petracchi. If you're new here, welcome, especially welcome to you. Feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and just stick around. We're definitely going to jump into some art critique, art knowledge, all things helpful for you to grow as an artist. I'm going to do my best to pour into you, and I'm going to learn too, because I learn from you guys. And so that's kind of how it's going to be tonight. So let me hear in the chat, you guys, what's going on. And Mimika, how you doing? Good to see you. Howdy. I got your question, by the way, so I'm going to try to address that. Mimika had a really good question, a tough question, and I'm going to jump into that. And there's Nick. What's going on, Nick? So let's see here. We'll wait just a little bit. And wanted to start off with a little quote here. Let me bring that up. It's a good one, a mighty good one, let me tell you. If I can get my mouse working here. Come on, mouse. Okay, I have to switch over. It is 如果你想跑，必须先学会走. That's something Chinese parents always say to their children. And I got that from my lovely wife, whose parents said that to her. If you want to run, you must learn to walk first. And that's kind of sets us up in a preliminary way to answer your question, Mimika. So we'll kind of get to that perhaps a little bit later. But you can imagine what that means. Just try to think how you can extrapolate that into your portrait drawing, into your artistry. And I think we're definitely going to get there. So we have, last week we were talking about how to tackle all of the things that artists have to face. Okay, so it was overcoming obstacles. And we're in a series on the battle for creativity. So I'm going through my battle for creativity book. And we kind of went through the first part of it, which was you have allies and you have enemies in this war of art. And we have to know that we're in a battle. We're in this kind of battle. So we need friends in this. If we have enemies, we need friends, we need allies, and that ally was the thumbnail. And so we talked about using the thumbnail, what it is, and how it can be helpful. And then we went through a whole list of enemies, and we started to go through some of these friends, but some of the enemies were like being too cocky, being lazy, let's see, not knowing some of the drawing fundamentals. And so we're going to cover that too today. And that's going to be really fun. Maybe we can sort of jump into that now. So let me see if I share this. I think you guys can see that. Let me know in the chat if you can see it. Okay. Can you guys see that? It says the design battle. Let me get this. Okay. Good. Okay. So we're definitely going through some of the allies, right, are these drawing fundamentals. And that has to do with your question, Mimika, which was, let me just read the question here. Looking at the chat. Okay. So Mamika's question was, how can we find the balance between discipline in the rules of design and freedom of our personal expression in portrait painting? In other words, how dangerous is it for us to get trapped in the realistic copying of visible reality and the rules of portrait creation and lose the inspiration of the moment? Okay, so that's, and that inspiration is the thing, it's the motivating factor, and you don't want to lose that, right? So how can we bring life into our artistry with enough structure so that it's not too rigid and not too boring, but does have life and and has that fluid sense of capturing the moment, let's say. So the last thing we talked about was perspective and how to draw in all three axes. And the next thing was drawing in primitive shapes. So anything you want to draw can be done with simple primitive shapes. Okay. Think like a 3D modeler. So if you visualize something in your mind, you can think of maybe a box in space floating there and think about extruding the edges, right? So it becomes an elongated box or a tall elongated box. Then think of twisting it, right? And then think of slicing it in half or pinching it, pulling it, rotating it, twisting it. That's part of what you can be doing to sharpen your visual memory, okay, is use simple primitive shapes and then turn them around in space and practice doing things with them in your mind before you do them on the paper. Okay. So what was that? Okay, so this is basically drawing in primitive shapes. So everything can be basically drawn and built with the ball, box, tube, or cone. That's what Peter Paul Rubens said. And so I believe him. And so you want to remember to kind of like, take a ball, box, or a tube or a cone, be able to draw those convincingly and draw through them like they're glass, draw the other side. And that'll give it the impression, right, that it's 3D. You can't see it, but you can give the feeling of it to your viewer by drawing through it as if it's glass. And find the center lines. Okay, so finding that the center line, whatever you're drawing, whether it's a face or a car or a guitar or a box, find the center lines because that's going to help you convey this thing in space in a believable way. All right, so drawing through your objects, finding center lines. I think that let's go through that a little bit. And this is all going to work together here. So if I bring up something here. So we kind of start with, let me just back up here. Let's talk about this. So here's something that is really, really important. And it's this kind of theory of art, this theory. And we've been through this a little bit, but we're going to go through it a little bit different way tonight. And these are basically your foundation. It's your fundamentals. It's the walk before you can run. Okay, and it starts here and it moves up. So we're kind of shooting for this goal up at the top, right? And to get there, to reach there, we need a few things to stand on, right? So for the artist, we start with lines. We start with the action, okay? It's number one, the life and the action. We use lines, we use shapes, we use story, we use compositional elements, And it's all very flat and 2D at this point. It's easier to draw a square than it is a box. Okay. So this is all about 2D. It's all about shape. It's all about silhouette. And it's all about the read, basically. That read is the instant recognition. It's the emotional. It's kind of on an emotional level. It's below the level of the intellect, really. And so that's what you want, is that audience participation, in the sense that this thing grabs them. They know what you're talking about. It's clear right at this basic level. Okay, and then we start to go from 2D to 3D. And those kind of skill sets are, concerned with rendering, perspective. It's the architecture. Okay, it's solid. It's 3D. Values, lighting. Okay, and then we go from there to realism and believability, life. So that involves adding details and textures. Okay, so this is the thing, and it's no different for any other art form, is you need these foundational skills. Let me see where that is, if I can get to it. But this is the thing that in the question that Mika asked was, if we're just really concentrating on our fundamentals, and what you need is to do that is really, you kind of need to copy, right? It's observational training that's so important. It's drawing from life, still life, drawing from the model, drawing from people around you. And in that copying, you're learning some things, but you're not really getting beneath the surface. So once you can copy, it's the first step, right? If I can copy, Chinese alphabet, I may be able to copy it, but it's of no use to me because I don't know what it's saying. I don't know how to use it. So the best I can have is a good copy, right? But if I know how to use it and break it down, then I can form sentences and I can express myself. And that's what we're after here, is expressing oneself through visual means, right? Some emotion, some story, right? Okay, just checking the chat here. What up, BD? Michael, hi. Nice. In the Ozarks, river rafting. That is so cool. I love that. Tell me what your experience is like. Because when I was in Florida, I took a canoe up a stream, and that was amazing. But I dumped it, and my wallet got completely wet, my money, and my phone. And that was pretty scary, but it did survive. So let me know how that's going, Michael. Okay. There's so much I want to say here, so I'm going to try my best to kind of do this. So the copying thing, right? If I'm copying and I'm playing a song and I'm playing guitar and I copy Led Zeppelin, The Who, or some classical master, I'm listening, I'm getting good ear training, I'm getting good physical dexterity, translating what I hear onto the fretboard and understanding how that is, where my hands should be. And I'm making music. I could sing and I can go out and perform. But the best I'm going to have is a good copy, because I don't understand harmony, right? I don't understand musical theory, chord theory, about how to link chords together to make a song that actually has movement, right? And that takes another level of training. So first is the copying, first is the observation. For the artist, it's copying your favorite artist or doing a master study and drawing from life. And then from there, you start to break it down. What's happening to make this such a cool thing? When you do a master copy, you can break it down in terms of this stuff and say, let me look at what this guy's doing with his shapes. Where's the 2D breakout of the shapes on the page? The graphic breakout, dark against light. And just take that part out, abstract that out, and look at the composition. How light versus dark? What kind of shape is it? What's the shape language, right? Because this triangle here, this says one thing, and this little guy says another, right? So there's shape language. So we're starting to break this thing down in terms of lines. You know, if I do that, starting to add complexity. So then we go and we could take, you know, another drawing, let's say this face right here, and we could look at, right, the shapes, the silhouette. We can see if it's clear and has the reed, you know, if it's clear. And then how do we turn on the lights? So we turn on the lights, we introduce value, rendering, perspective, and that's that architecture. It makes it solid. And then we add details. As you know, we could go on, work on this thing for 2, 5, 10, 20 hours, right? And get it really, really dialed in. Okay, but there's a danger to that, right? So let me get a new thing here. So here's the foundational stuff that we had here. Okay, then we can kind of go like a couple different ways. If it depends on what you want to do, what is your goal? Right? And you can be a realist, or you can be a kind of stylist. So realist, that could be, you know, photo real, or any number of things that look, you know, on a spectrum of real and abstract, they look more real. And that could be, you could just be a straight up portrait drawer or painter. You could be an illustrator. You could be landscape. So what you need out of this foundational stuff, right? If we're going 2D, 3D, and then, you know, reality, let's say real, you need more of this. So both these realist and stylist, they start in the same place, but then the skill set needs to be honed a little bit differently. So the realist is going to go for like great rendering, great details, great textures, and they're going to get really good at the surface. Now, the person who wants to be a stylist, well, they could be a cartoonist. They could be a character designer, work for Disney, Lucas, Warner Brothers, TV shows, animations, action. They could be, you know, they could be abstract even. I mean, Picasso went really abstract, but he studied this stuff. All those guys, Monet, Manet, Renoir, Degas, Picasso, they knew their stuff. They were trained in this, but they weren't, you know, locked in. But that has a lot to do with your goal, right? And your personality and what you want to say. Like, what do you want to express, you know? And that takes a long time. That can take years to kind of live life long enough to have something to say, you know? And sometimes that means going through hardships, right? I know every great song, not every great song, but so many of the great songs are artists that had the courage to put it down to lyric and music and sing about it. Now, how vulnerable is that, right? You're taking that pain and you're translating it into, let's say, joy. I mean, I was just listening to Neil Diamond. I don't know, you guys are probably too young for that. Michael, you know Neil Diamond, but he was big in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s. I think he's still alive. But he had a song called Song Sung Blue. Well, if you sing a song with the blues is sad, right? But if you sing that song, you take the blues, he says, and you sing them out again. You get to feeling good again, he says. When you take the blues and make a song, you know, you just sing it out. So you're getting it out, and a song sung blue can take the blue and make it something different. You can transform it. And so anyway, that could be one of the things that you want to say. That's your goal. So you might not be into heavy realism. You might be somewhere in the middle, because you might be using, you know, symbol and metaphor to get across what it is you want to say, or anything in between. So the stylist has a little bit more leeway, because they're not trying to make things look or conform to how they look in nature and the laws of light and physics. They can abstract a little bit more. And so their skill set needs a little more, maybe more of this and less of this. So they're more into the, like they said, the silhouette and proportion. And color. Because the silhouette and proportion are the main things, are the mainstay of cartoonist, the character designer, right? Because you're pushing and pulling reality and distorting it. And using shape language. So it's heavy on this. So it's the relationship of the basic shapes. So your skill set is going to be a little different than the realist, you know. And if you're an animator, of course, everybody needs these foundations. You got to walk before you can run. But the animator is concerned with movement. It's not at all rendering, not at all. Like, there's no rendering. It's completely a different mindset. Okay, and it's about story, communicating action, but it needs the foundational skills. So the danger is, if you want to be more of an expressive person who wants to do like fantasy or express emotion, at some point you have to put the book down, right? So if you're a realist, you're really working on those rendering, surface details, and lighting. But to get over to here, you have to put the book down and start drawing from imagination. So this is your imagination. Imagine all the people. Okay, right? So that's tough. But I say, to get there, right, to climb those stairs of imagination, you've got to start on step one. And then you need that foundation. You start on the ground and you jump to here, fundamentals 1, jump to here, fundamentals 2, to reach up there, to reach that high. That is a high goal. That's at the peak of this hierarchy, is to be able to do that. So you've got to go back to, copying over and over and over again, till you get the confidence, till you understand what's happening about, anatomy. This is over here on the realist anatomy, depth, perspective. If you think about music, and I think about Jeff Beck, who, great guitar player, he said, I study and I learn to play scales, and then when I go to play, I forget it all. You forget it all, so that you can fly, right? You can't be in your head thinking theory and scales and harmony. You have to let it go. So you just need to be confident, and to do that, it's repetition. So that's kind of my answer to that. It's repetition. That's the same way for every art form. If you're going to be a writer, you write a sentence. And if you are good at writing sentences, and you are because you started as a kid, those tools of words and sentence structure, right? You don't think about it anymore. It's second nature. You just write what it is you have to say, and it doesn't get in your way. And you can mix and match the words. You can change the positions because you understand sentence structure. You can introduce really interesting words into here, and you can be poetic about it. You can be literal about it. And that is the spectrum, Hey, Tao. Okay, so I hope that helps. And that's fun. It's fun for me to think about this as well, because it helps me, because it's never ending, right? So if you want to run, you must learn to walk first. And let's get into, well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that first idea of the primitive shape. So if we go through this now, because that first slide was about primitive shapes. And if we're drawing, we're going to be using basic 2D. This is the first level of fundamentals. The ball box tube, well, it's not a ball box tube, it's a square, triangle, circle. And then what you do is you extrude the edges, right? So that the square becomes a cube, right? And this thing becomes a pyramid, or it becomes a cone, right? And I'm drawing through as if they were like glass, right? I'm feeling it, feeling those hidden sides. That helps me get better, and it helps me communicate the solid nature of it. Here, there's no inside corners, so it's hard to know its orientation in space, but I can still draw through it in my block-in to make it look 3D. So we go from 2D to 3D. And then we start to build things with this. This is if you're a musician, it's do, re, mi, and a couple of chords of, C, G, and D, each one made up of 3 notes. You can make a song out of that. It's so very basic and very simple. And that's what this is for us. It's kind of the do, re, mi for artists. and we're going to make people. We're going to make buildings. We're going to build buildings, flowers, cars. It's endless, right? And so you've got to get good at, drawing boxes in space, right? So that they look, if you can't handle the box, right, then how can you handle a human head? It's so much more complex. So, and then combining boxes to create depth. So now you're stacking skills, right? You're drawing in 3D, and then you're creating depth by overlapping, okay? And so you would just play with this for a long time until you can do it without vanishing points or strict perspective. And that's a skill in itself, very valuable skill. Just drawing a box in space. And so we got to go from the flat, and you can imagine something very far away is very flat. And then as it gets closer, we might be able to see two planes as opposed to one plane. So in the distance, we have one plane. And then we have something a little closer, right? Middle distance. And then we have something that's really close up. Okay, so it's 1, 2. So this is a 1 read, a 2 read, and a 3. And that's how you start to build depth and volume. So this is kind of like depth into the picture plane plus volume of these shapes into forms. And that's super valuable. Right? So if you look outside, if you go outside, the distant, mountain is going to be just a shape, right? And there may be, so it tends to be kind of flat. And then there may be a tall building, in the distance, but you can't maybe see the top of it, or maybe you can, but you see a sense of perspective. And that's getting close to you. You're here, standing there, and you're looking at this thing. And then as things get closer, they get lower, right? And something that gets really close to you, you can see everything about it, almost. You can see at least 3 sides. And so it's all without knowledge of perspective. Okay. So that's just some basic breakdown of this stuff. Play with boxes, play with tubes, learn how to draw them so they appear to be going away or coming toward you. And they're I forget the word. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Let me see who's out. Hey, Sampico is here. Alo Iman Ra, what's up? Where are you from? BD, where are you from? Let me know in the comments. Okay, that's enough of that. If you have questions, write them down there. I'll try to get to them. So let's look at some of this stuff here. So first up is Mimika. And this is a very nice drawing. Very nice. Expressing emotion. Okay. Take a little sip of water. Somebody said hi. He's in Mass. BD is in Mass. Okay, Mass. Massachusetts. Good, welcome. So let's just, I love your shapes. Shapes, check. Edges, pretty check. Okay, could need a little adjustment. So edges, we'll put the perfect stuff in green. Values. We need some work on the values. Textures, details, great. Yes, okay. But that's at the top of that pyramid. Remember, that's like the very top is textures and details. And down here is 2D and 3D stuff, lighting, value. So let's kind of get to that. Okay, so that silhouette and the read is really good and the emotion is there. So let's talk technicals here. Anatomically, I think her eyes are too close together. Okay, so you want to spread those apart a little bit. Let's just see if we go into Liquify and we take the eye distance, right? You need one eye distance between. And so maybe that helps, right? If I take this and measure one eye from tear duct to tear duct, I need to have, on average, room for one eye, okay? Your eyes were a little bit too close together, so it made her look a little cross-eyed. Okay, second thing is values. Okay, so if we bring up our trusty value scale here and we map, let's just sample. Her skin, you see on the color block, it's about a 50%. Shadow, 90% or 80%. Highlight, about 10% gray. Okay. So what I'm kind of seeing is if we start off with a local color for everything, the hair has a local color or local value. Okay, color has value. So it's a local value. In this case, it's kind of blonde, so it's somewhat light. And we start covering the whole hair with that local value. Skin, light skin, we block in that shape with a local value. That local value is about 30%, let's say, 30% gray. And dark sweater, right? That's almost black. And so we kind of lay in flat in 2D. Remember, that's the foundation pillar number one, is capturing the action. It has to do with silhouette and read. It's very shape-based and 2D. What you got, okay? The value part is what we want to fill in correctly. And so I'm just going to take that value and darken it up. It's darker, my dear. Okay, put it in flat. Let's see. Kind of flat like that. Just think about it kind of flat. It's a mid value, right? If we're looking at 5 values up here, it's one of the lights. So you have kind of 2 in the light, 2 in the dark, and 1, I'll say 3 in the lights, because that middle value, that number 3, this 3, 1, 2, 3, that one's going to be in the lights, okay? And this other stuff is going to be in the dark family down below that. Okay, so it is something like this value too, because we need room for the highlights. We need room for those light accents. So after we do that, then I'm just going to go lighter, like let's say the value number 1, and I'll paint my highlight shapes very flat. Just kind of put them in where I see them. Don't worry about the edges yet. Just put it in, get it the right shape. You're spacing and placing the elements. Just get the right value and the right shape. Now, Richard Schmidt, the famous painter, wrote Alla Prima, Everything I Know About Painting. He's just passed away. He was a master. Everybody loved him, learned from him. And it's a great loss. But he taught me that if he, to mind one's shapes, values, and edges, that's all you got to do. Shapes, values, edges. If you take care with those, you're probably going to come out with a good painting. So we're doing a value shape right here, right? What are my value shapes for the lights? Just spotting them in. Okay, maybe that's good. And now we'll just adjust the edges. So I'll just go through and say, is that a hard edge or a soft edge? It is so simple. But you won't know it. You'll struggle for years if you haven't broken it down for yourself as one of those parts that you need to learn that make this thing real, make it look believable. It's one of the building blocks. And you go through and adjust the edges. There's no real hard edges in this. They're all soft. And then one other thing you want to not do is make the whites of the eyes white. They're not going to be white, right? If we sample her sclera, it's pretty dark. Okay, 70% gray. How about on this side? Yeah, 60% gray. So I want to take that and darken down in there. Squint and compare. When I squint down here on the left side, her iris blends into her sclera. And then there's just the lower border of the eyelid is there with a bit of light. So, I just want to darken that up. On this side, same thing, darken that up because the light is camera right, 3/4 down, just about. So I know everything facing to the right and up is going to get the light. Everything facing down to the left in this universe is going to be in shadow. So that translates into the right side of the eye. White of the eye is going to be lighter than the left side on both the eyes. And then I'm going to add in right that top shelf of the lower lid, just a little bit. That's the thing that divides the lower lid from the sclera, is that little island of white, or off-white, let's say. And then one final thing is the catch light. That's the thing, that's the soul, and it's going to make it look alive. If you don't have that, it's going to look, you know, perhaps soulless. So if we put that glistening, watery highlight there, it's going to look like somebody's home. Somebody's living inside there, capturing the soul. Oh yeah. And oops. So I just want, ooh, that was fun. That messed up my work a little bit. Don't do that. Okay. So, and remember to line up your eyes. You know, you've got your eyes a little bit askew, and I want them to be, you know, like it is here. One eye is a little bit lower. Otherwise, foundation was successful on many different fronts, and the value is where you struggle. And maybe it's the scan, you know, maybe it's the photo, maybe that stuff is in there and I just can't see it. But from here, that's how it looked to me. And so you're really making great progress. I'm very, very proud of you. And you're getting better each time. And so that's exciting, very exciting. Um, yeah, let's see. What a joy to see Mimika, Zoran, and Michael. Yeah, so Gelviero, MTE Gelviero says that. Hey, what's happening? Okay, great to see you here. So let's go to the next one. Oh yeah, okay. Speak of the angel, MTE, Meta Galverio. Where are you from? Tell us in the chat. Okay, let's go. Let's see what's going on with this one. Call up a little layer here. This is fun. I'm having a good time. Okay, good. So, one of the things that many artists struggle with is confusing values. So, the values, if they get confused, in other words, if the darks are too light and the lights are too dark, you're going to have confusion in your values. It's going to lead to a kind of muddy looking drawing. And it's not as clear as it could be, right? And maybe it suffers a little bit because, you know, you're painting a pretty girl and muddy doesn't communicate pretty, you know? So we need to do a little adjusting. If you're, gosh, if your darkest, if your lightest darks, which is right here in the reflected light, those are your lightest darks. If those aren't darker than your darkest light, you're going to have this muddy problem. You're going to get mud. And it's going to destroy the illusion of depth. So you're going to take depth and it's going to destroy it. Okay? Reflected lights are your lightest darks. Your darkest lights are here in the half tone, here, just before the core shadow. So those are in the family of lights, but they're dark halftones. The lights are the halftones. So you have a halftone here, you have a halftone here, and then you have a halftone there. Okay. So you have your light halftones, middle halftones, dark halftones, and then you go into the core shadow, and then you have this reflected light. So if that's mixed up, it's going to look muddy. Okay. So that's what's happening here. And another thing is what we kind of get into is shading. And when we're shading, I want to draw a distinction between shading and, let's say, rendering volume. Okay, so rendering is just turning on the lights and making something look 3D with value. So you have darks in your lights and you make forms turn. Okay, so if we're just shading, it's kind of like we're a little bit not thinking and not trying to communicate volume. We're just shading and putting something dark somewhere because we just think it looks dark. So we're just smudging around some dark somewhere. Whereas if we're thinking, what is this thing? Is it more round or is it more square? And how can I communicate that in terms of where the light direction is? Right? Then I can use my value to turn this concept of volume, which is the line work I just did, into the illusion of 3D form. And I do that by kind of my value relationships. And I try to communicate the planes as they are revealed in the light. Okay, and I think you're getting there, right? But let's talk about edges, because right here, this is kind of a roundish, on girls, on women, you can make things more round instead of more square. And so this edge right here, you can take it down a little bit. That's going to help because there's a bit of a core shadow, and core shadows tend to be soft or firm in their edges. So we're doing a specific thing here. We're doing an edge pass. And we're trying to create some variety in the edges and communicate form with our shading and shadowing, and doing that in a very conscious way. So I want to soften all that out a little bit. Remember, the more edges and the more lines that you put on women or anything, you're going to make it look older. So pretty girls don't have a lot of opportunity for wrinkles, lines, and heavy edges. They're a little bit more soft. It can be. Okay. Then in certain areas like the nose, you can play, sometimes you want to play up the structure and sometimes you want to play it down. So her nose, of this. So if we're talking about her nose, right, I'm going to start off with a very simple shape. And then I'm going to try and build architecture into it, 3D architecture. So I start out flat in 2D, and then I'm going to go 3D. But I'm going to get there with my ball box tube or variations of that. So the nose is like a simple wedge. The top, two sides, and a bottom, right? And a front. So these planes communicate front, side one, and side two. So I'm going to kind of play that up a little bit because she's got that. And that's why studying the planes of the face is so important, because you might not see that. you might not build that into your drawing because of it. And you're just going to be kind of smudging things around a little bit. And I can see a little bit of her nostrils, so I'm going to bring that side down. I see the bottom plane a little bit. And so I can just build this out. So now I've got a lot of structure in here, and I've got a concept of a nose, but I need to make it real, and so I need to play that down at some point. But I'm going to start with the kind of prism or wedge shape, and that's going to be built into this, connecting the eyes and the forehead with this keystone glabella area. So there's a lot of knowledge going in here, and then I'm going to start to round it out. And make the wings, ball of the nose. There is some bony structure here. And where I see it, I see an edge right there. That's bony structure, bony structure. There's the highlight all the way telling me that's a front. It's facing the light more than the sides. So it gets the highlight. The sides get the shadow. You're pushing the sides down with this modeling tone. And so I can do that and start to create a nose, okay, that has some structure, but if I need to, I can play it down, right? If I want it more feminine or more childlike, less edges, right? Less lines. And so I would just kind of assess my edges here. I can go through the drawing, again, a little bit darker and really establish some of this stuff, right? So that's another secret, is going through the drawing 2 or 3 times, first with a block in, then cleaning the drawing, right? And then painting it, right? So you have a nice roadmap with your nice clean line drawing. And then you can start to put in your values. So that's a workflow thing. You don't need to hit it the first time. In fact, you hardly ever do. Okay, so then the nose is connected by the philtrum to the lips. Everything's connected. And then I can make it her nose. I can start to dial it into who is this person and make it specific. And so I start with the generic nose and then move to the specific person. And that's my kind of my way, the way I'm going to tackle that problem. There are different ways to tackle the problem. This is a good way, not the only way. Right, so that, that would help explain that nose better. Just with communicating 3D form and the nature and kind of edge that's happening. Is it more square or more round? And each thing I do hopefully makes this more and more realized. And, we could go on and on with that. So introducing structure where you need it, and less structure where you don't need it. Lips look good. It looks a little bit, see now, the halftones in the face, they look muddy because against the hair, value is contextual. So if you put a dark thing next to a light thing, it makes it look lighter. if you put a light thing next to a dark thing, and vice versa, it makes that dark thing look darker. And so you've got a middle value thing next to a kind of a light value, and it doesn't really help make that face skin tone look like skin tone. It looks like there's something a little bit dirty on her face. So you want to just create contrast. Okay, you need contrast. So you need the accurate values. And so that dark value next to the light value makes the light value look lighter and softer and more skin-like. So you need to kind of push your value range. Don't be afraid of the dark. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see my students make, is being a little tentative, not being able to push the dark value range, going to the darks. And they're afraid to do that, but you'll get there. Some people only do darks and they're afraid of the light. So everybody's got something. All right, so now we've got a nice value, nice shape. Kind of want the edges to say hair. Okay. So doesn't that look kind of better, right? Makes that skin. And then we just need to do our edge thing here. A little bit softer maybe. Right, that transition from the core shadow into the light. You want to be careful with that. And then you've got that hand. That's a tough one. We won't get too much into that maybe, because that's a complicated thing in itself. Pushing the value, simplifying the values in the eyes. That's going to help put it in kind of that flat shape, value shape first. Squint and compare. Try to get the right shape, the right value in the right place. One thing next to another. And if I squint and compare the iris to the value of the eyebrow to the value of the hair, those are all the same. So I group them into the same family. And I just try to keep it really simple. I mean, that whole thing just goes into shadow right there. So I'm just going to take a chance and kind of draw what I see. So that brings up some, attention to her eyes. There's a shadow down here. And the mouth is pretty dark too. So if we make a simple statement, oftentimes that's the better way to go. Not too much detail, but more structure and shape. Get those right. The details can come last or later. And so it takes a little work, to get there. You're just adjusting. Everything, fine-tuning it. Let me see here. Trying to create kind of a focus. Squinting and comparing. Bringing the lighting down a little bit, and then I can bring it back up later. at it small. You're always adjusting back and forth, weaving things, dark over the light back into the dark until you get it, you know? Sometimes it takes a long time to bang it into shape. And you have to kind of diagnose the drawing and see where the problems are and fix those things. But you kind of can't fix them until you can diagnose what the problem is. Gets really dark in this area here. Usually that area is dark. Shadows, light doesn't get in there. She's got these really intense eyes. And so I would push that value range, light, middle, dark, so you can express that character and quality of this person. So you can see I'm kind of going through the drawing again, first pass, second pass, third pass. I will adjust things, readjust. Squint and compare. Group my darks with my darks and my lights with my lights. It's great fun. It's always amazing to me to get the buzz, thrill of making something look 3D and come alive on the page, you know? It's thrilling. Okay, so we just went darker with the values in certain areas, brought in those eyes, the dark accents there, and let everything else kind of fade to second place, you know, so that her eyes, or let's say her eyes are the star, and everything else is the support. Her hand should be a support. You know, her hand shouldn't be too loud because then we start looking at that. By loud, I mean too many, um, focusing on too many details. So it starts to attract attention. Hands are difficult. But, you know, I'd play that down into some kind of plane instead of anatomy and tendons and bone and stuff like that. Okay. All right, Meta, great job. That's a tough one, but you did great. And I just kind of took it and tweaked it, you know, and hopefully that kind of helps you, that now you know, okay, I can go darker and don't be afraid. And you'll be happy that you did. If you're not, you can come back next week and tell me you were very disappointed at going into the darks. Okay. All right. Let's go on here to Carolyn K. Is Carolyn K here? Let me check. Yeah. Sculpture, right? Mimika says kind of like you like to sculpt. Absolutely. You want to become like a sculpting drawer and think like a sculptor. That's what I want you to do. So you got to get good at the planes of the face. That's your key. All right. So Carolyn K. All right, Carolyn. I'm going to squint and I'm going to compare, and I'm going to make it really small, and I'm going to see postage stamp size. Because if I'm sitting at my drawing table with real paper and pencil, I'm going to get up and walk away and look at it and see, okay, what do I see here? And I just see dark hair, eye sockets, mouth, and shirt. And with yours, I kind of see pretty good structure. We want to make it a little bit clearer. How can we do that? Well, I think your details are super duper. Textures are great. The shapes are really good. The silhouette and the read are fantastic. And I'll just take a little time here to just quiet down some stuff. Like just quiet some of this stuff down so it reads as a shirt, but it doesn't call out too much. We don't need to know about the shirt. We need to know about the lady, right? It seems to be, a dark shape against a, full value background. So I'm just going to make it dark. That'll pull it forward. And I'm just going to quiet it down by filling in some of those holidays of white paper that are showing through. Okay. See how that attention goes up to her face when this thing's the right shape and value and just kind of quiet? Good. Then I want to squint and compare the value on her neck to everything else. And those eye sockets, shadow under the neck, they get pretty dark. It depends. I know you're using pencils, so I won't go to full black here. But going to darken that neck down. You've got too much detail in there, right? It's getting to look noisy. And that's the other problem. So we have, first problem was muddy drawings. The other one is spotty drawings. So you've got too much value and you've got spots here and spots here and spots. And you had kind of some spotty things in the shirt. And so it looks in the hair, you've got, dark, light, dark, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, and it looks spotty, right? It's attracting attention. So we want to kind of fix that. What do? We unify our values, dark values with the darks. So I'm going to squint, and that neck is overall, it's kind of a middle dark. I don't see much in there when I squint. Squint is this secret key. So let's see what happens when I simplify. Okay. What I talked about up here about mixing up your values so that the lightest dark is darker than your darkest light. And your reflected light in her chin is too light. And it's just as light right there, 20% gray and 10% gray. That 20% right there, your darks should never, ever be as light as your lights. If they're in the darks and in the shadows, Even if it's a reflected light, it's not getting direct light. Okay? Her face is getting lit, maybe like top down somewhat. There's the light source. The planes facing light are going to be lighter and lit more, and they will be in the lights. Everything in the shadows must not, under any circumstances, be as light as your lights if they're in the shadows, even if it's a reflected light. So you've got to respect that. So I'm just taking this, and when I squint, I don't see anything in there. In the eye socket. And I'm just thinking, how can I design-wise unify these shapes and design the shapes? And shape design is so important because it's one of the foundations, the 2D read, the silhouette. That's the thing that has to come through first, and the pretty details and pretty paint over the top, okay? But the shape design and that value is your bread and butter. It's like putting the walls on the house before you put the wallpaper and the paint, the chandelier, and the furniture. If you do that stuff first, you're just going to be, living on the street, the couch and wallpaper and chandelier, but you're not going to have a roof and walls. The shapes and the shape design are kind of what's going to carry this thing because it's structure. It's the 2D structure. Did a nice job here. Now, the other thing that's kind of happening that's very subtle is the fall off of light. Since she's getting lit from the top, the light is lighter on the forehead, darker as we go down the form. So, and let me just unify the hair. Don't need all of those individual hairs. You just need the shape and a value, and put some details later, much later in the process. You can take my hair drawing course. I go deep into how to draw hair, and so you can deal with this, deal with hair once and for all in the proper way that you're going to be really happy with. Because the hair, it's the thing that we kind of just, it's really important to getting a likeness is the shape of the hair mass. So until we kind of deal with hair, it's going to be maybe a problem for us, might be why we're not getting a likeness. So we want to kind of have that at some point, get a handle on the hair. Just kind of thinking of shapes, values, that's it. Okay. I just want that transition from hair to skin. It's very soft. You want to kind of take note of that. It can be soft, but it also can pick up edges. So you're going to have lost and found edges in anybody's male, female hairstyle. And so wherever it's soft, when you squint down, make it soft. And wherever you see a hard edge, like where her temple meets the hair, make a hard edge right there. It's pretty hard right there, right there. Put that in, and the contrast variety of edges will make your edges both look more hard and soft. Just a couple little details. Okay. Now I was kind of getting to this fall off of light. Fall off of light is what? Does anybody know the formula for the fall off of light? What's the formula? Any physics majors in here? So, anybody in the chat? Come on, people. You're welcome, Meta. Yeah, totally. It's the only way we get better. I know it's hard, but subjecting ourselves to critiques, you can get better a lot faster. Believe me. So don't take anything personal. Let's see. Checking the chat here. Royce says lack of shadow on the bottom of right cheek is what puts off the likeness. I'm not sure if that was for this one or the other one, but in general, the light is falling off at 1 over the distance squared. So the intensity of light is 1 over the distance squared. So the closer the object is to the light, it's going to be lighter, and there'll be a gradation, a fall off, a darker gradation from light to dark rather quickly, 1 over the distance squared. So you can kind of see that in her face. It's lighter, and there's a gradation darker. See that? And that has a big effect on things looking believable, especially portraits. And I don't know why exactly, but it's just how things are. In reality, it's one of the things. And so use that. So see how it's starting to just pop off the page a little bit now? Um, the planes, thinking of edges. Squinting and comparing. Oh, look at that. What happened there? That's happening. I got my swudge tool. It's freaking out though. It's painting black. How can that be? It's weird. Okay. Just gonna go lighter with this. Because some of these, when I squint down, those wrinkles just become kind of a flat plane. When I open my eyes, I see the stuff, but going with the principle of squinting and comparing, I don't see a lot of stuff when I squint, so I don't paint it. I don't draw it. Oops, I'm back down on the drawing. Oops. That's why. So I put something on, check it. If it's not right, I take it off. There, that seems right. I've got a top plane and a side plane. Top plane. They don't do too much, Don't gotta kill yourself, as my teacher, Mr. Sanchez, would say. You don't gotta kill yourself. Don't gotta kill yourself. All right. That's positive. Calm down some of those wrinkles a little bit. Overstate it. Got a little corner in here that I want to get down. And then I'll bring it back out later like this. Oops, this corner here, lower border of the lower eyelid, the upper border of the lower lid. Just one plane right there. Okay, just taking that core shadow down. It's not that dark on the chin. You guys get it? Simplify. Express planes and plane changes. Bring in structure and then back off on the structure if you need it. Right? That lip, it's a plane. It's facing away from the light. Any planes facing away from the light, darker. So upper lip is darker than that lower bit lip that's facing up and towards the light. Right? Right? Okay. And then turns away from the light. Okay. And a little edge on the neck here. And I want to go deeper in that occlusion shadow just under the jaw. That's going to hopefully give me the 3D pop that I need so that everything is there in the modeling factors. What are modeling factors? Anybody know? Modeling factors? You guys know. Mimika, you know. You tell me what the modeling factors are. Light's getting me into trouble. How much details is enough versus much details in creating likeness? Zoran says. Light hair is getting me into trouble. How much details is enough in creating likeness? I don't know. You got to feel it, sense it, go back and forth with it. What's your goal for that piece? Do you want it to look super real or do you want it to look stylized and a little bit painterly, or some loose areas, some tight areas? Ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish? How much time do I have to do that? If you want to do full-on details, you need a lot of time. Okay. And so there we go. Last thing I'm going to do just to this is put in catch light. We've got to have that little catch light. Okay. That brings a sparkle to her eyes and all that fun stuff. There you go. So you just need to go a little further maybe with some of the values. So if I look at that, looks funny. Okay, there was a problem with my smudge tool, but the idea is to squint and compare. And if you take it down, you want it to look like a yearbook photo where it's black and white, very small, but you know who it is because it's the likeness is really in the silhouette shapes. It's as simple as that, and the values that come through. And then that's the instant read, the 2D recognition, and then you pull architecture from that and make it look 3D. Okay, so Carolyn, awesome. Thank you for submitting that, and I hope that helped. Let me know in the comments if it did. Um, let's see, we got, I think that's Maggie. I can't tell. Maggie. Um, resemblance of your mother's facial expression. Okay, that's good, huh? Okay, cool. This is really, really nice job. Um, I'm not going to say too much about this one. This is like a Sargent master study, and everything looks really good. The hair looks awesome. The features look good. I love how the touch onto the paper. And this looks like a natural media drawing, I'm guessing. One thing is the big form modeling. So that just means that you're modeling the big forms. It's kind of it's the impression of the light. This needs to be. Let me take the. Okay. Take the color out. It's the impression of the light on the big form. It's kind of like compressed shadows. So I'm just taking, the idea is this, and I'm thinking of the light coming, kind of direct, a little bit from the top, and I'm thinking, what's that big form and how is it receiving the light? And that's it. The planes closer to me are lighter, and the ones that go farther away, I push them back with that modeling tone. And I'm modeling the big form, and it's that. Okay. And so you want to go ahead, you can go a little bit, darker on those cheeks and show the form a little bit more. Oops, I'm drawing on the painting itself, but oh well. Because there's a plane there, plane here on the forehead. And so just a couple of those things are what I would push a little bit. Everything else is great. Okay. And that's it. It's a great job. Nice. Okay. So guys, I think that's gonna wrap it up. Let me see if there's any questions here. Yeah, Zoran, think about focus parts. Okay, got to rethink that. You want to put the focus on the eyes, usually in a portrait, eyes and nose. And let's see here. So guys, thank you for being here. And if you want to join, if you are not in the group, you can join the Facebook group and get critiques from the community. It's an awesome place to grow and get support. And that's over at my Draw Juice Facebook page. The link is in the description to this video. You can get my course that goes in deep into this stuff. My Photoshop brushes, links are in the description to all of that, my book. And so if there's nothing else, yeah, Tampico, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Then we'll shut it down for the evening and we'll see you next time, okay? All right. We are over and out, everybody. Sleep well, have a good evening, and we'll see you guys. Thanks a lot. Ciao.